Am I on? Oh,
Thank you for joining us on the International Euphonium Summit Living History Series with our guest today. I'm your host, Nicholas Haffter von Heide. Our guest today for our second in series is Mr. Eon Cooper. Welcome back.
thank you. Great to be here. All right. So
Awesome. So we're going to dive back into IU.
I, yeah. Okay. So coming out of high school, this was back in the day where we had, you send in cassette tapes for auditions and stuff like that. So I sent a tape to Morehead State University because I was very interested in studying with Earl Lauder, and then Florida State University because it's Florida State. And again, I was encouraged through Frederick Fennell to check out Indiana University. I somehow got managed to be accepted at all three. Wound up choosing Indiana.
Okay, so let's. I'm going to segue back to for those that hadn't listened to the podcast segment from the first in series with Eon Cooper because we covered it at the end of the podcast segment. Um, your correlation with Frederick Fennell. How did he encourage you to apply to IU? At what point did you meet Frederick Fennell and he actually told you,
No, it wasn't him directly.
okay,
It was his partner because his partner we were friends for a long while after that. His friend Larry Adair was also a musician. In fact, he was a bassist with the Fort Lauderdale Symphony at the time, and he had discussed with Fred. I know this friend of mine. It's Frank's son or whatever, and he wants to go into music. And I, I I always entertain like Eastman, and it was nice to go to Eastman, the wind ensemble and stuff like that. But he's like, tell him to go to India. It's like Indiana. It's like, yeah, just trust me, go to Indiana University. So yeah, wound up at Indiana University. I was an ed major, so I had to play in the marching band, marching 100. Ray Kramer was the no. Ray Kramer directed the symphonic band, but he was also he did the music rehearsal for Ray Kramer's, and Wilbur England was the director of the marching band. And I still hate marching band to this day. And I hated it back then, but I was an ed major, so I had to do 2 years of marching band.
well, did you always have
And
flat feet?
yeah, since I was yeah, they used to try to get me to walk on my the sides of my feet when I was a kid, but no, they're if I if I outside with wet feet or whatever, it's just flat foot. Now my mom has a high arch, which kind of baffles me, and but Dad, I don't remember having flat feet.
So
But
sometimes arches can collapse actually.
oh well, I probably have a
I
now,
hear you. I hear you.
and it's you have the ballerinas tend to walk with their feet out. It was always it's the same thing. And my sister's a physical therapist, and she's like, you need to turn your feet in when you walk. You're pronating and stuff like that. It's like I can't help it, but yet they still to this day standing. Where'd you go?
Oh,
Are you there?
yeah, I'm here.
I see
I put
me.
I put you on spotlight.
Okay. So yeah, so the feet are still bad, and the asthma. I used to have asthma too. That was a problem, which people are always asking, well, why didn't you go into the military? And at first, I had the flat feet and asthma problem, which is how everybody else was getting out of the army. But by the time I did consider auditioning, for service bands. They had the thing, you had to be a soldier first. You had to go to boot camp and all of that, and that's not my personality.
But they also didn't tell you, and this is what I hear, especially on other artists and musicians, is the recruiters don't tell you everything. Like
No,
those,
they're not.
yeah, like the premier bands, they don't go through basic. They don't go through that training.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, well, I think that's the way of the time. I think now though you have to go through it.
for everything else, they don't have to go to the school of music though.
Okay, yeah,
So the
yeah.
premier bands, they all go through basic, and a lot of, I mean, we call in the army, we call Fort Jackson relaxing Jackson, uh, and we so
The school of then like the Navy School of Music or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
that part didn't bother me, but to go out there and like shoulder a rifle and all of that. An interesting. My brother coming out of high school was accepted at West Point. He went to West Point and did boot camp and then quit. So yeah, it's just not in me, that military regimentation, and I'm not, so the whole idea of killing and all of that isn't real. Even though I know that's not supposed to be my job, but
Well,
I mean these recruiters too. I mean, I had one guy ready to sign me up. He had
well, I'm sure, because
right,
the recruiters get massive like kudos for signing up band people,
yeah,
but
yeah,
and
to
that
drive
time,
trucks and wash dishes.
in that time period, I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
about what decades was that?
Okay, so I this was early '80s when I first started at IU, and it was probably like 87, 88. I think when I was in conversation with Walter, the Army recruiter,
Walter.
and yeah, he was ready to had me signed up, ready to ship me off. I'm like, whoa, 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 what are you getting into here? But yeah, so let's back to IU, the marching 100, and okay, so D. Stewart was my teacher.
Okay.
Um, I also started taking trombone lessons. There's a feller named Bob Palmer, who was the grad assistant, who was my teacher freshman year. The studio, I worked with Harvey Phillips. We did the Tuba Christmases and the October Fest. I remember the parties at the ranch with the kegs and the chili and all of that. Then Van Haney had a German band. That was pretty fun too. And Keith Brown. I didn't work too much with Keith Brown. I know that I remember that he had done a lot of like solo arrangements and stuff like that, but I never really worked with him. Van Haney and D. Stewart and Harvey. I spent it. Harvey's now the soul and the passion and all of that. Harvey had that, but I didn't spend that too much personal time with him. So in the marching band season, the section leader comes up. He's like, "Hey, why don't you audition for pep band?" I'm like, pep band from basketball? I said, "But I hate basketball." He goes, "You what?" Now this is Indiana.
Yes.
Bob and I, we had just finished winning national championship the year before, or whatever. And he said, "Yeah, so for basketball, I hate basketball." He goes, "You what?" So anyway, I auditioned for pep band. I got in the pep band, and of course, fell in love with Indiana basketball and all of that. And yeah, well, I think I did that for 3 years, maybe 4 years. Just I heard what Eugene Rousseau was the saxophone teacher there. I heard what saxophones were supposed to sound like. I always hated that instrument. The high school sax, it just sounded like total crap. But when he we did I think it was a Husa concerto with the concert band and Eugene Rousseau, and had that big beautiful sound and resonance and yeah, that was really nice. But and then to just sit in the band and have a full horn section and all of them could play, and the tubists were amazing. The trumpets. Now the trumpet, the Adams students, you could always hear them warming up wherever you were. This was Bill Adam, and of course, it sounds all raucous and crass or whatever, but he got great results. His students were just amazing. The horn, I don't know who the horn teacher, but I mean, even these are like world-class guys. I remember like the violin teachers, and the Rostropovich, I believe, was the cello teacher. It was, and there was like kids would rotate between like Juilliard and Eastman and Peabody or whatever, come to wherever they could get the scholarship money.
In Curtis,
right? Curtis, yeah. My D. Stewart was a big Curtis guy at Philadelphia Orchestra. But yeah, so my parents dropped me off and handed me this pile of money. So I really had a good time. I had a problem going to class. I'd always go to my lessons and ensembles and stuff like that. But as far as like theory and sight singing, ear training, and all that stuff, yeah. So
so anybody listening to this actual video, in the podcast segment before this, Ian actually highly recommends oral training, sight singing, and dictation toward the end of the segment, around the 2-hour mark. So it's completely opposite of what he actually.
What else? Yeah. So and then I guess it was later on, and I actually had to. But no, even the fact that I didn't go to class that much, but I mean, when I did go, I would have to do these exercises and stuff like that. That training made playing and sight reading and stuff infinitely easier, because I mean, it's kind of like, what's the word? It's a linear and mathematical, and the way the notes are divided. I mean, a quarter note is divided into 2/8 notes. The triplet,
continuous subdivisions.
Yeah, and once you really are able to hear and write it down, it makes infinite, or let's say exponential difference in your,
or rather automatic. It becomes automatic, because we talk about scales, and that becomes automatic within our subconscious,
within your DNA. And there was this was something I learned later on too, but I mean, you can't, when you're approaching a brass instrument, you've got to approach it the way a singer does. A singer knows the sounds he's going to make. He knows all the rhythms. He knows all the intervals and the relationships. If you're not hearing in your head what it is you want to play, it doesn't work. And I really didn't grasp that until my Florida State experience with Paul Evers.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because we talked about the kind of that putting the soul in the music, that authentic sound as the being, and
mm,
when we remove it and being mechanical,
mm,
for what we hear nowadays in a lot of players is they're mechanical and they don't think, they just do, and they
mm.
just execute like the command
Li-
of
It
learn,
like a mechanic or a plumber or something like that,
or a computer program.
or a computer program. Yeah, and and you can hear even today. I mean, it's like he doesn't know what that note's supposed to sound like,
Right.
right? And so another thing I learned later on, you practice everything slowly. The hard, but I mean, if there's a difficult, because I mean, you can tell after your first sight read what the problem is. I'm going to have a problem here, and problem there. And if you sit there and you slowly with a metronome each pitch until you know it like a singer does, and you're able to sing it rhythmically and intervallically correct. Then when you have that intention in your head, you know exactly what it is that you want to sound like.
And
You're
reach
not
for it.
fishing around for notes in the horn, right? You're telling the horn instead of guessing,
And then
right?
correcting the pitch and making sure that's where you need it to be, instead
and
of,
and and those relationships, people may not realize it, but you know what a B flat sounds like in your head before you play it.
Mhm.
If you trust it, it's like in your DNA. All these little the scales that you do and the Remington intervallic things that you do become ingrained in your head, or your DNA. And if you trust yourself, it's there. When you remember a piece or you think about a piece of music, you always think about it in the right key.
Mhm. And the
It's
right
it's
pitch,
it's just
the
yeah,
intervals.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. And it just makes everything simpler instead of fishing around, and then there's things you work on away from the horn. Like if you're having a problem with a run or whatever, if you just sit there and listen to the way your fingers fall down, you can hear that they're not falling in the right place. You work on your fingering by yourself. Mouthpiece work. Again, you're singing. I mean, when you're playing on the mouthpiece, it should still sound like music. It's still a song, and you should be able to hear that. Yeah, this guy knows exactly what it is he's trying to
But
play.
that's our conversation of that whole first segment of, not first segment, but the segment of this podcast and this video that we're doing in second series with you,
Mm,
is that knowing the self, knowing who you are, knowing your voice,
mm, mm,
and projecting it, not reflecting it, because
mm,
that reflection is can be
mm.
distorted by any amount of influences.
Yeah. Mm. And but I mean, now there's a point, like the young artist, as Jacobs likes to call it, because we're the young artists,
Sure.
that you get to, he would say, well, how would Joe Alessi play that phrase, or how would whatever, some model that you have. But after a while of being able to mimic or imitate, you you've got to find your authentic sound,
And what works for
right?
you.
And what works for you. There's pieces I would never try to play. First of all, I don't I don't feel it. I don't understand it. There's
It's too
it's
foreign.
huh?
Like it's too foreign.
Yes, yeah, and for me to, there might be a lot of laziness involved in it too. I mean, and if I don't have to, why am I
Sure.
gonna learn the Kevin Day?
Well, it's
Yeah.
like the associations that we come across every single day, like with the cup of coffee and how we like our cup of coffee,
Uh,
or a personal interaction with a coworker or another student or another artist, or it's those daily influences and those interactions
mhm.
that are
Yeah.
purposeful.
Um, It's like I heard, I was listening to a Roger Bobo interview. Roger did die, but he used to be a Facebook friend of mine, and he's like one of the only, because I was talking about how artists need to be more involved in what's going on, and it's right. But he would actually engage with me and talk to me and stuff. I know he just recently died, but I mean, I have friends and family who, just pretend I'm not there. But he would actually talk to me. What he said, somebody asked him, I wanted to make an album. What should I, how should I approach it, whatever. And the first thing he said was, don't do what everybody else is doing. Find something that is true to you and resonates with you and brings out your personality and your right. Everybody's done the Vaughan Williams and everybody's done the Hindemith and every right. If there's nothing for you, as you were saying, find commission or ask somebody to write or write it yourself or whatever. And that makes a lot of sense. You can't really be trying to be Brian Bowman or trying to be
why be someone
right?
else when you can learn to be yourself?
Right, right. That's.
But most people don't. I think there's that education fail across the board is the interplay of distraction, as we were talking about,
Yeah.
happens so frequently, daily, that it's hard to like allow your kids to be themselves and even know how to even start that road.
Yeah, yeah. And this is it's something. My thing is, I mean, I don't play as high as most people, or I don't play as fast as whatever, or so many notes or whatever. But just a simple melody, whether it's Happy Birthday or whatever, the way I do it,
it's
just as magical as somebody who's playing up in the stratosphere. And yeah. But I mean, again, that goes back to you. This is how it comes through me. Mm-hmm. This is how this comes through me. But again, too, you can't get too egotistical, because it's like I have to get out of the way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And when I'm able to do that, you're sitting back and you're kind of like, you're listening and you're like, who is that guy?
So
yeah.
I've listened to another podcast talk about the Vaughan Williams and this idea that Roger Bobo shared with you, this principle, and it really is a principle, and how we look at the staples of work, Vaughan Williams or the pantomime or solo symphonique or whatever. Like, what else is there to be said?
Yeah.
And that becomes the question and the status. However,
I really want to talk about that. That's been done, and it's been said over and over, and it's yeah. But speaking of Spark, you were asking me about. I love the Spark works for euphonium.
Yes.
Party Piece was my favorite. I don't know if you know Party Piece, yeah. But yeah. But most people are just afraid to be themselves.
Or it's too unknown and too foreign.
And frightening.
Mm-hmm.
It's frightening to step out there and say, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I think. This is how I feel.
This is my version of my reality at this. This
is my naked. This is my nakedness. Yeah. So yeah.
Wow, we went really deep, really quick. Back like the first part of our segment in kind of finding your voice in college, and especially in your, the CD
mm,
that the pieces of works that you wanted to record and his advice.
mm.
And we'll get into that in the
But as far as Roger Boat, no, we would talk about it, or he, comment back and forth about the things we were talking to before this segment. I mean, we like real human,
yeah,
deep stuff. Yeah,
right,
and yeah, I was sorry to hear that he go. He was a good man.
yeah.
Um,
And that's another reason why we do what we do for the Farm for Dreams, the International Euphonium Summit, and the Living History series, because of artists and musicians and
mm,
those that are passing with no discourse of relationship like Ian and I or any of our cohorts on
mm,
the summit and the Living History series. And if you want more information on Ian, go to at the time of this recording on October 15th. Go to internationaleuphoniumsummit.com slash Ian Cooper for more information and our book list we talked about in the podcast. And then eventually it'll be moved over to farmfordreams.com, which is the main LLC that I have for my envisioning of my contribution of what I want to bring to this world. And
mm,
these stories, if you want to leave a legacy, and because we're not guaranteed tomorrow, and you want to hand your kind of meaning and purpose in life, whether it's a piece of music or your stories, because every story can make a huge impact for the good and for the bad, but the good is what we're looking for, and to be a touch point for the current or future euphonium artist or any musician for that matter or anyone in life, to take hold of and to understand that you're not alone, and that value that you could bring, like Ian, like myself, like all those that are on our cohort, to add into what we're doing here. If you're interested in being part of it, find the link at youtube.com/at Euphonium Summit. You can view the playlist there for all our cohort, as well as find the link to book your first in series, like Ian's done and is now on his, will be on his third in series with this next interview. And to cover these, your principles, your foundations, your cultural background, your influences, what makes you you, because that's what we want to hear as a musician, is your interpretation, your vision, your aspect, your outlook on life, your contribution, like Ian has done with the second in series. And if you haven't heard the podcast, it's amazing. Go listen to that. I'll leave the links below this video. Once I get the podcast out into the right formats and such like that, I am doing this all on my own at the time of this video still, and look forward to growing this beyond what even I can do mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's all up to where everybody leaves their stories and grows them. Ian, thank you so much for joining us on this second in series. We're going to head off into the after action, the after podcast segment to this, leaving him at his third year at IU, and before he gets into furthering his life and experiences for the third in series. So follow us more and follow his story more at internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/euphonium, or Ian Cooper. Yes, he's a euphonium musician as well as conductor, and such an amazing individual, like everyone on our cohort. Um,
I'm a mess.
we're human. We are human.
Right.
We're human.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
And
definitely, yeah.
we're going to continue that humanity onto the
Yeah.
podcast segment right after.
Yeah, I'll try to remember. Yeah, that was okay. I'll try to remember where we are.
Oh no, that's what the beautiful thing is with all these
Okay, yeah.
records
So
right here.
I was going to I told you the story about Klaus's Lounge where they said there's absolutely no market for what this school produces, but we also had the tuba basement. So I'll pick up with the tuba basement because that was a pretty interesting. That will be the next time.
Absolutely, tuba basement. So
Yes.
keywords there. I will hashtag that and make that part of the conversation. Um, that's awesome.
The tuba basement.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna leave it right there. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for joining us, watching, share it with everybody you know, with the middle school programs and future musicians alike across the board. We are now in over 11 countries in over 4 continents. Let's grow
We're
this,
international, man.
right? Man. Okay,
Cool,
anyway.
man.
Cool beans. Everyone, thank you. Ian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nick.
We'll talk soon, everyone. You don't go anywhere, Ian. We've got
Oh.
that.